Hello and welcome to Before Exams. Here we help you to prepare for your competitive examinations. Subscribe to our channel so that whenever we post the content about your exam, you get the notification about it.
Hello everyone. In today's video, we will be talking about theories of economics. In this video, we shall be covering the overview, introduction, and three prominent economists and what their theories propounded about economics. So, let's get started. The discipline of economics arises from scarcity of goods and services. We have spoken about it in the previous videos where we had a huge different description of macro and microeconomics. We've also spoken about how society requires an orderly system of producing and distributing the necessities. It is basically the study of systems of production. We have our own factors of production and distribution, which are channelized and called economies, and their fundamentals, dynamics, and result. Economics as a world is very much huge now, but it was propounded by basic elements, and there were several philosophers, thinkers, economists behind the rationality, behind the ideology that has made economics what it actually is today. And if we talk about the three backbones, then we can see that the three most important economists were Adam Smith, Karl Marx, and John Keynes. Each was a highly original thinker who developed economic theories that were put into practice and affected the world's economics for generations. There are several other economists as well, but we just when we give this overall idea of the backbone of economics, we can say that Adam Smith, Karl Marx, or John Keynes, or as some people pronounce it as Keynes, are the they literally have done the best of their knowledge to propound several theories of economics that we study today, and out of which we have propounded several other theories as well. And this is behind the rationality of several countries in the world and how they work, how what discipline they have adopted, and things like that. So we will be talking about their economic theories and what were the major elements behind it and the factors that led to the growth of economic development. So when we talk about Adam Smith and his invisible hand of capitalism. So Adam Smith, we all know he was a Scottish philosopher and is considered to be the founder of modern economics. He lived from 1723 to 1790. In his time, philosophy was an all-encompassing study of human society, in addition to an inquiry into the nature and meaning of existence. Deep examination of the world of business affairs led Smith to the conclusion that collectively the individuals in a society, each acting in his or her own self-interest, manage to produce and purchase the goods and services that they, as a society, require. He called this mechanism by which the self-regulation occurs the invisible hand in the groundbreaking book, The Wealth of Nations, which was published in the year 1776. The invisible hand describes the unintended social benefits of an individual's self-interested actions. It is a metaphor and is basically denotes the unseen forces that move the free market economy. Smith could not really prove the existence of this hand, but he presented many instances of its working in society. So the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, they individually go about their businesses. Each produces the amount of meat, bread, and candlesticks he intends to and judges to be correct. Each buys the amount of meat, bread, and candlesticks that his household needs. And all of this happens without their consulting one another or without all the king's men telling them how much to produce. So we can say it is a free market economy in action. In making the discovery, Smith found it that this is known as classical economics, and the key doctrine of classical economics is the laissez-faire, which is attitude of government towards the marketplace that will allow the invisible hand to guide everyone in their economic endeavors. His work indeed gave generation of economists plenty to think about and expand upon. So we can say how beautifully he described this invisible hand by saying that it is an invisible hand, and he metaphorically used it with the free market economy. If we give this a detailed analysis, we can say that he introduced this concept in his book, and he had this metaphor for the unseen forces that move the free economy. Through individual self-interest and freedom of production as well as consumption, the best interests of society as a whole are fulfilled. And there's constant interplay of individual pressures on market supply and demand causes the natural movement of prices and the flow of trade. The invisible hand is part of laissez-faire, which means let do, let go approach. In other words, we can further say that this approach holds the market will find its equilibrium without the government's interference or the government's guidance or the government interventions, which will force it into unnatural patterns. He introduced the concept in several of his writings, but it found the economic interpretation in the book and inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. Each free exchange creates signals about which goods and services are valuable and how difficult they are to bring to market. So these signals captured in the price system spontaneously direct competing consumers, producers, distributors, and intermediaries. Each of them pursue their individual plans to fulfill the needs and desires of the others. So the major takeaways, if we say that there's this metaphor, he introduced this concept in his book, and he said that each free exchange creates signals about which goods and services are valuable and how difficult they are to bring to the market. If we compare the invisible hand with the real world, we can say that business productivity and profitability are improved when profits and losses accurately reflect what investors and consumers want. This concept is well demonstrated through a famous example in Richard Cantillon's An Essay on Economic Theory, the book from which Smith developed his invisible hand concept. Cantillon described an isolated estate that divided into competing leased farms. Independent entrepreneurs ran each farm to maximize their production and returns. The successful farmers introduced better equipment and techniques and brought to market only those goods for which consumers were willing to pay. He showed that returns were far higher when competing self-interests and when competing self-interests ran the estate rather than the previous landlord's command economy. As a result, business climate of the US developed with a general understanding that voluntary private markets are more productive than government-run economies. Now, we shall move on to the Karl Marx exploitation theory. Karl Marx is a German economist and a political scientist who lived from 1818 to 1883. He looked at capitalism from a more pessimistic and revolutionary viewpoint. Where Adam Smith saw harmony and growth, Marx saw instability, struggle, and decline. Marx believed that once the capitalist, the guy with the money and the organizational skills and setup, has set up the means of production, all value is created by the labor involved in producing whatever is being produced. His view presented in his 1867 tome Das Kapital, or Das Kapital as people used to pronounce it, a capitalist's profit comes from exploiting labor. That is, from underpaying workers for the value that they are actually creating. For his reason, Marx could not abide the notion of a profit-oriented organization. So we can say that Marxism is a Western intellectual tradition spanning 150 years, consisting of three particular concepts that we will talk about in this video. His economic analysis of capitalism is based on his version of labor theory of value and includes capitalist profits as extraction of surplus value from the exploited proletariat. So, if we talk about the economic systems in Karl Marx's view, we can say that he saw capitalism as the agenda. In simple terms, economies consist of producing goods and exchanging them. They can be divided into formal economies and informal economies, but capitalism is an economic and social system in which capital and non-labor factor of production or the means of production are privately controlled. Labor goods, capital are traded in markets, and profits are taken by owners or invested in technologies and industries, and wages are paid to laborers. Though capitalism has developed incrementally since the 16th century, Adam Smith is largely credited with outlining the theory, and then we had Karl Marx's theory. Though the market is encouraged to act on its own, in any capitalist economy, the government is intimately involved in regulating the economy. Karl Marx said that capitalism functions in distinction from socialism or various theories of economic organization that advocate public or direct worker ownership and administration of the means of production. Socialism calls for public allocation of resources, creating a society characterized by equal access to resources for all individuals with a method of compensation based on the amount of labor expended. Many socialists criticize capitalism for unfairly concentrating power and wealth among a small segment of society that controls capital and derives its wealth through the exploitation of lower classes. An informal economy, on the other hand, is economic activity that neither taxed nor monitored by the government. Although the informal economy is often associated with developing countries, all economic systems contain an informal economy in some proportion, and informal economic activity is a dynamic process that includes many aspects of economic and social theory. Capitalism is a system that includes private ownership of the means of production, creation of goods for profit, competitive markets, and etc. So we can say that capitalism is generally considered by scholars to be an economic system that includes private ownership of the means of production, creation of goods or services for profit or income. Economists, political economists, and historians have taken different perspectives on the analysis of capitalism. Usually, they focus on the degree that that government does not have that much control over markets and on property rights. And most political economists emphasize private property, power relation, wage labor, class, and capitalism as a unique historical formation. It is generally viewed as encouraging economic growth. The differing extents to which different markets are free, as well as the rules defining private property, are a matter of politics and policy. And many states have what are termed mixed economies. So, a number of political ideologies have emerged in support of various types of capitalism, that the most prominent being the economic liberalism. The relation between the state, its formal mechanism, and capitalist societies has been debated in many fields of social and political theory, with active discussion since the 19th century. Going back to Karl Marx's view, the situation of management exploiting labor underlies the class struggle that Marx saw at the heart of capitalism. And he even predicted that struggle would ultimately destroy capitalism. To him, class struggle is not only inherent in the system because of the tension between capitalists and workers, but also intensifies over time. We can see that in the today's scenario. If we overlook at the scenario, we can clearly see the visionary thoughts he had. The struggle intensifies as businesses eventually become larger and larger due to the inherent efficiency of large outfits and their ability to withstand the cyclical crisis that plague the system. Ultimately, in Marxist theory, society moves to a two-class system of a few wealthy capitalists and a mass of underpaid, underprivileged workers. He also predicted the fall of capitalism and movement of society towards communism, in which the people, that is the workers, they own the means of production, and thus they have no need to exploit labor for profit. Clearly, his thinking had a tremendous impact on societies. If we take example of former USSR in the 20th century. Now, two events have undermined his theory. First, the socialist centrally planned economies have proven far less efficient in producing and delivering goods and services. That is, at creating the greatest good for the greatest number of people than capitalist system. And secondly, workers' incomes have actually risen over time, which undercuts the theory that labor is exploited in the name of profit. So this theory has been cut by the advent of time and the prevalence. His theories have been discredited. They are fascinating and worth knowing. They even say something about weaknesses in capitalism. For instance, large companies do enjoy certain advantages over small ones and can absorb or undercut them, as shown by examples. Keynes. Now we will move on to the Keynes theory. His theory was revolving around the government should help out the economy. So we can see that it is an economic theory of total spending in economy and its effect on output and inflation. It is developed by British economists in an attempt to understand the Great Depression. So we can say John Keynes, a British economist and financial genius who lived from 1883 to 1946, also examined capitalism and came up with some extremely influential views. They were, however, quite different from those of Karl Marx's and, for that matter, Adam Smith as well. In 1936, he published his General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money. We will examine these theories later. Let's just talk about the propensity. So, the largest significance of his work lies in the view he put forth about the role of government in capitalist economy. And he was writing during the Great Depression. So it's worth noting that at that point in the US, unemployment reached about 25%, and millions of people had lost their life saving as well as their jobs. Now, there was no clear path out of the depression, which led people to seriously question whether Smith's invisible hand was still guiding things along, or was this worldwide collapse of economic activity the end of capitalism? However, Keynes believed that there was only one way out, and that was for the government to start spending in order to put money into private sector pockets and get demand for goods and services up for running again. President Franklin D. Roosevelt gave this remedy a try when he started a massive public works program for employing a portion of the idle workforce, and US entry into the World War II rendered this a less than pure experimental government expenditure. The war effort boosted production to extremely high levels, and while simultaneously taking millions of men out of the civilian workforce and into uniform. We can say it is an approach to economic policy that favors using the government's power to spend, tax, and borrow to keep the economy stable and growing. So it is an economist or other believer in Keynesian economics. The validity and desirability of Keynes' prescription for a sluggish economy using government spending to prime the pump are still debated today. Many other economists have note advanced theories and otherwise added the body of knowledge in the science, and there were several other ideas that propagated. The most influential is Smith because he founded and formalized the science of economics. Marx because he challenged capitalism and such a forceful impact on society and politics. And Keynes because he prompted new practices as well as new theories in the world of economic policy. Keynes also played a role in the founding of the International Monetary Fund and other political economic measures taken at the end of World War II. So, with this, if we say that the theories of economics are varied and distinct from each other, there are several other theories as well. However, these three theories are considered to be the topmost theories since they give an altogether different scenario. But there are other theories as well, to which we will have a small glimpse. So if we say that what is an economic model, we can say an economic model seeks to explain our economic realities. For example, why markets behave the way they do. And an economic model seeks to test an assumption or theory about economic behavior. So there are several economists that will use either a theoretical economic model or an empirical economic model to test their theories. And theoretical models will focus on providing qualitative answers and predictions, and an empirical model will seek to provide numerical substantiation to such theories. There's more than one economic model. We all know that there can be a model on the basis of inflation rate, GDP, per capita income, etc., etc. But when we talk about classical economy or classical economics, it is a school of economy thought whose principle derived from pioneering thinkers such as Adam Smith and John Locke. We have just read about it, and I'll give you a takeaway. So he said there's invisible hand. He said there's this division of labor, free trade, and laissez-faire. That is an economic system, including the belief that markets have a tendency to self-regulate. Then it just so happened that Adam Smith was alive in a time of great change in his country, and several other things happened, and this theory propounded laissez-faire capitalism. The theory of laissez-faire capitalism is closely linked to classical economics, and there are certain fundamentals to it, like basic unit of any society is the individual, and the natural right to freedom must not be denied to any individual. Nature herself is a harmonious and self-regulating system, and individuals must closely watch corporations and other entities of the state because of their inclination to disrupt. Then the most important tenet is that markets should always be competitive. Here is where the concept of laissez-faire runs into trouble. Governments routinely adjust interest rate to stimulate their economies, and they meet their target inflation rates or add value to their currency, and they are generally accepted as a legitimate means of maintaining an economy. So we can say that such schemes are they are effective while forming an economic bubble. Then Karl Marx, we have just read about him. He spoke about the he advocated the concept of capitalism with its own faults and miserability, and further included conflict and instability. And Marx and Smith's philosophies were grounded in the same plot, that is, economic modeling must be driven by a moral code. Now, there's one more thing, that is efficient market hypothesis, which you will witness when you study the chapters by your own. So efficient market hypothesis is a theory that is within the field of financial economics, and it deals with it is often referenced in relation to investment and stock market. So we can say that it proposes that an investor can never beat the market. An investor can never beat the market because the stock market reflects all the possible available information. Although this theory is commonly referred and used, it has been the subject of fierce debate as well. And Warren Buffett has been able to consistently beat the market for decades. Now, the invisible hand theory, we have read it, and then we have Keynesian economics theory. We have just read about it. The key tenet of Keynesian economy was that the idea the government should involve itself in the running of a capitalist economy. This model even revolves around the idea that if we consider that there's this central bank had oversight and control of local banks, the depression could have been avoided. Okay, then there was Friedman monetarism. Milton Friedman was a US economist, and in contrast to Keynes, an advocate for the free market, and has been closely associated with the theory of monetarism. So, the model advocated for the government manipulating the economy through fluctuating tax rates and varying government spending to suit the times. Monetarism, on the other hand, advocates for the government controlling how much money in circulation, but no action. There are several other theories as well. We have prospect theory, game theory, and we have our favorite particular school of economic thought and major economic thinkers like Friedman. We have just read them. Wealth of Nations is itself a book that can describe